Well, folks, we're going to be talking about a couple stories today. One of them has to do with something we never put out a dedicated video on, but might become more relevant now, dealing with something related to Nintendo Switch 2. And the other thing we're going to be talking about is this idea of micromanagement at Nintendo, how Nintendo manages their IPs, because a former Retro Studios developer has now spoken out against Nintendo's practices. And needless to say, I really disagree with his assessment. Obviously, I don't have the direct hands-on experience, but the way it's worded and what he's complaining about seems like the exact thing this industry probably needs more of. So I find it just to be really interesting. So we're going to dive into that as well. And I want to get your guys' thoughts, because of course my opinions are just my opinions. They're not, law or anything like that. So I really want to get the conversation going, both on this Switch 2 story and obviously on the idea of how Nintendo manages their IPs. All right, folks, before we dive into this, I want to remind you, we're on the road to 140,000 subscribers. You want to stay up to date on all things Switch 2, Nintendo, and everything else, all you gotta do is subscribe right here. Without further ado, let's just dive right in. Got this article over on Nintendo Life today, and it says, random, Metroid Prime 3 dev left Retro Studios after unhealthy relationship with Nintendo micromanagement. Now, I did watch the video and confirm everything reported in here, so it does look to be correct. But here's what went down. All right, so we know that Nintendo can be a little protective of its intellectual properties, and that's actually an understatement. But it turns out that the company's micromanagement was enough to make one artist on Metroid Prime 3 Corruption leave his position at Retro Studios. This is back in the Wii days. That's according to a recent episode of Kiwi Talks podcast, where host Reese Riley sat down with former Retro and Bethesda world artist Nate Percopile to talk about his experience working on Corruption. In the interview, Percopile describes the setup as not my style, with Nintendo employees flying in from Japan to request changes to the smallest details of production. These are not people who worked on the games, Percopile clarifies. These are people from Japan flying in to micromanage characters and stuff like that. Yes, people flying in from Nintendo who created the Metroid IP to give you that job at Retro Studios, a studio they own, are going to care about the minute details. That's actually kind of important. It's actually a reason why a lot of games flop today, is not caring about the details. Anyway, let's move on here. So it says, none of these critiques were directly aimed at Percopile's work on the game's world art. So he's not even complaining. Hold on. He's not even complaining about what he was doing. So the micromanagement that he's about to get into, it wasn't on his work. It was on other people's. And those people aren't the ones complaining. Okay. Anyways, he recalls that the character art teams would consistently be asked to make minute changes, resulting in what he describes as an unhealthy relationship between Nintendo and Retro. Retro Studios is Nintendo, by the way. In case this employee forgot that Retro Studios is a wholly owned Nintendo studio. All right, moving on. I have never liked working with publishers or anything. Kind of sets the expectation there that I don't like working with the people that pay us to make things. By the way, Nintendo's not just your publisher. They own the studio. All right. But this was a whole other level of micromanagement. Like, no way, in my opinion, if you're not directly working on the game, go away. You aren't directly working on that game if Nintendo doesn't hire you. You're not making a Metroid game if Metroid never existed, which, again, Nintendo created. Okay. You can give feedback and guidance. That's what they were doing. Sorry. But I don't think you should be telling the devs what to do. They're your boss. They hired you. They own you. This isn't just a publisher. Retro Studios is a wholly owned Nintendo internal studio. They're your boss. You don't have all the proper context or framing to actually be giving these critiques, and I think it's completely not how things should be made. You don't have the experience to understand the critiques they're giving. If the critique is about how a character looks, right? It's about how a character looks and how a character is designed. Nintendo created these characters. Nintendo created them, not you. They did. Samus Aran was created by Nintendo. Ridley, created by... I don't understand how you could ever say that they don't have any insight to give these critiques. It's their IP. They created it. This is wild. All right. Not to say that Metroid didn't turn out great, but it didn't turn out great because some shoulder pad was shifted slightly. I think that's kind of an unhealthy relationship. Then he goes on in this article and it says, combined with the comparatively limited power of the Wii, which Perkapau describes as stifling for an art career, this relationship with Nintendo was enough to make the artist leave Retro Studios after working on Corruption for roughly a year and a half. It doesn't sound like the easiest working relationship. We can't say we're that surprised to hear about Nintendo being protective over Samus. Look, and having heard some of the minuscule changes that Sakurai requested on Smash Ultimate, pickiness is far from a rare occurrence. So, look, obviously this is just his opinion. I don't know what kind of work environment he's seeking. He's a former Bethesda Retro Studio. I don't know if he's even in the game industry anymore as an artist. I'm not really sure when you're hired at a Nintendo-owned studio, do you not know what you're getting yourself into? For starters, the guy quit even though they weren't critiquing and making changes to his art. Okay, so this had nothing to do with his job. He was annoyed at what Nintendo was doing with other people, and in particular, the character artists, where Nintendo is going to be the most critical of how the characters look and how the characters feel in the game, right? They invented Samus Aran. They invented the Metroid IP. Nintendo wasn't sending a bunch of suits out to Retro Studios, like, a bunch of corporate heads and, money people to tell you what to do. They were sending out people who've been working on Metroid since the 1980s. These people have more experience than your year and a half working on Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. In fact, a lot of these people probably worked on Metroid Prime 2 and Metroid Prime 1, giving feedback on those games before you even worked there. I obviously don't want to sit here and blast this person. I think what they said is utterly ridiculous, and their expectations working at Nintendo and then having to do what Nintendo says, I think is just completely wrong. Look, I compared this on social media to when I worked at McDonald's, right? And I know, McDonald's, yeah, this is how any company works. I worked at McDonald's for a number of years when I was younger, and once in a while, the supervisor who supervised like 15 stores, 20 stores or whatever, I'm not sure on the exact number, once every 6 months, he would come visit our store, and he would tell us things that we need to fix or correct. Now, he doesn't work directly at the store, so he doesn't know the in and outs of the politics between all the staff and the employees and the managers and the customers, and might not even know exactly how certain things work on the line making sandwiches, because as I found out, having to fill in at other stores, every McDonald's is a slightly different from the others in terms of setup and how things are ran. Now, obviously the idea is the food should all be the same in the end, but even that, can depend on, who's managing the store. But that's not the point. The point is the supervisor would come in and he would just tell us what we're supposed to do. And you know what we did? We listened. You know why? They're our boss. They're our boss's boss. They are the people enabling us to have the job to work. Now, I know this isn't a creative job, and I understand if you feel like someone's stepping on your toes creatively, but you're working for somebody else. You're being hired by a company to bring a vision to life. And while these people, when you claim, well, they're not directly working, what do you call what they're doing? They are flying their staff from Japan all the way to, they're coming to you, right? They're coming directly to you in your studio, checking on the progress of the game and being like, hey, things are cool, but you know what? The shoulder pads, maybe they're a little low. If you go look at the original Metroid Prime 3 Corruption trailer, you understand what I mean. That was actually a very common complaint of the fans, is the shoulder pads didn't look quite right on Samus. Oh, look. The people at Nintendo agreed and said we needed to change the shoulder pads on Samus. I don't understand this. This would be... I'm reminded of the Sonic movie. You guys remember the original reveal, the very first trailer? I don't want to show it for copyright reasons, but the very first trailer of the Sonic movie, when Sonic looked messed up, Sonic didn't look like Sonic. Yeah, that's what happens at times when you let the creatives do what they want and don't listen to the suits. Don't listen to the feedback. When they don't step in to help make sure something feels and looks and is designed the way an IP is supposed to be. So what happened? Massive backlash publicly. Lo and behold, they changed the design of Sonic to actually feel like Sonic in the Sonic the Hedgehog movies. This is what I mean. Nintendo, yes, obviously they're very protective of their IP. They micromanage like hell. But it's their own studio. It's not considered micromanagement when it's their own studio. These are people that have been working on Metroid for decades, coming in, lending their experience with the IP to say, hey, this doesn't look right. And the guy complaining wasn't even the person they were complaining to. They weren't even complaining. They literally were just giving feedback and saying, no, you need to change this. You need to change that. Yes. You know what's funny? I actually reached out behind the scenes because this story is obviously going all over the internet right now. And I was just asking around, and it sounds like one of the people that visited, one of these people from Japan that visited during Metro Prime 3 corruption while this person worked there, I don't know if that's related to this complaint, was the creator of Metroid. So imagine that, you apply this complaint to the creator of the IP telling you need to make a change. I'm not saying that that's what the person that's specifically about. They're just saying people from Japan. They're being very generalized because they apparently don't know anything about the history of Metroid and where this stuff came from. So they only worked for a year and a half. It is what it is. We're going to move on. But I just thought it was an interesting story to go over. We'll link to the video and the article down below. One other thing I wanted to talk about is something that came up in our last video, but we didn't really cover individually, and that's because Satisfy announced a new accessory for Nintendo Switch 2 here. So we got the Zen Grip 2. Have yours ready for the next gen launch. There was some debate over, is this really about the Switch 2? Well, that debate was put to rest. That debate was put to rest because there was a video on the page. The video had an ad. Now, here's the thing. The video no longer exists. And before I even show you what was in the video, here we go. Here's Satisfy's YouTube page. It was a YouTube video. Look, there was another video here. It's down. It was the reveal of the Zen Grip 2. But in that video were some images. And I showed them in the last video. But you know what? We'll go to my tweet about this because this is kind of a breaking story today. This image was in the video. And if you look at this, and it's very hard to tell if you're on a mobile phone, there's two buttons here, which kind of indicates that this is the Nintendo Switch 2. But if you go over here, this one's been altered. The contrast has been altered a little bit, so it's easier to see on phones. And you can clearly see there's a button here and a button there. You can also see that these Joy-Cons appear to be white Joy-Cons, which is something we have noted. It seems to be a common thread with Switch 2 mock-ups are the white Joy-Cons. So it's just something to pay attention to, that there is a chance that this was potentially the first ever image of the Nintendo Switch 2. It's probably not. It's probably just a digital mock-up based on dimensions and stuff out there. But there is a chance that this is the first ever, at least digital look at a real Switch 2, but we don't really know, right? Well, Nintendo apparently got them to take down the video. The video no longer exists. They clearly knew what they were showing in the video, and Nintendo got on the phone. I don't know if their lawyers or ninjas showed up. Satisfy has eliminated the video. They've took down all images related to actually having the Switch 2 in the grip. Does this mean that Satisfy ever had like a mock model sent by Nintendo they could use to make the grips, and they put that mock model, and that's what we're seeing? We don't really know. Did they 3D print their own mock model based on dimensions Nintendo sent them? Were they sent dimensions directly by Nintendo, and that's why they have to take the video down? Because, hey, if you were given something directly by Nintendo and you use that to make a 3D print and put it in your model and present it online, you're now leaking stuff that Nintendo didn't want to have out there in that way. This isn't like a factory leak. This would be Nintendo trusting you with information and you abusing that information for the point of marketing and making money before Nintendo has even said it's okay to do so. So in the end, I do think this is a situation where Satisfy has been working directly with Nintendo for a while. They've been very successful directly because of the grips they make for Nintendo Switch 2. They make grips for other devices as well, but Switch is really where they got all their notoriety and partnerships with beat 'em ups and all. So Satisfy is huge right now in the accessory world. I do think that they made a mistake, and Nintendo got on the phone, probably didn't come to their door. It was probably an email or a phone call and told them, hey, you can't be having imagery like this out there. Obviously, the problem is once it's out there and it's on the internet, it's there forever. You can find re-uploads of it other places. Out of respect, I'm not going to show those re-uploads, but these images that I just showed, they're everywhere as well. They're all over social media. So look, the video was real. We're not bullshitting you guys. It was up for many days. So I think in the end, this is obviously a mistake. They should not have put that video up. Could this also just be one giant publicity stunt to get people to keep talking about the Zen Grip 2 that you could pre-order right now? Possibly. I don't know. I know I'm going to put a pre-order in, though, just because they're kind of claiming that, like, be ready for launch by they're kind of claiming that they'll send the grip to you before the system launches so you have it day one. Kind of curious about that. So I might actually pre-order one just to have it when Switch 2's here to see, man, was this actually made with a model Switch 2 or like proper dimensions? I guess we'll find out when Switch 2 releases. Anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there as another story floating around. That's going to do it for today. Kind of two stories that are just weird. Not exciting stories, just kind of people making mistakes or messing up or just saying stupid things, in my opinion, of course. You guys are free to disagree with that. I want to hear what you guys have to say about this down in the comments below. I am Nathaniel Robojans from Nintendo Prime, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.